Hi there, I'm Natalie Fox, I'm a registered dietitian, and in this video we are going to talk about the biggest protein myth that you probably believe. In fact, this myth was probably taught to you in school. It is such a widely believed myth that it was even included in my curriculum when I was becoming a dietitian, even though it is completely false. Can you guess what it is? It's the myth that plant-based proteins are incomplete and require combining in order to provide all 9 of the essential amino acids. Let's get into it. To start off with, let's do a little bit of a history lesson. This idea started in 1954 with a book called Let's Eat Right to Stay Fit by Adele Davis. In this book, Adele Davis coined the term incomplete protein and describes the practice of protein combining, where you would take 2 plant-based proteins that have complementary amino acid profiles and eat them in the same meal so that you would get a complete amino acid profile. She also asserts that if you do not complement an incomplete protein within 1 hour, that none of the protein in that meal is usable by the body, which is kind of nuts. Now, this idea of incomplete and complementary proteins didn't become popularized until 1975, when both Vogue and the American Journal of Nursing published articles detailing the practice of protein combining. And for a time following this, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, then known as the American Dietetic Association, cautioned vegetarians to be sure to combine their protein sources. However, the ADA's stance on this was reversed in 1988 when they published their first position paper on vegetarian diets. And the author of that paper noted that the reason why they reversed that stance is because they couldn't find any evidence that this was necessary or beneficial. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics has published updated position statements on vegan and vegetarian diets, and in every iteration of their position statement has noted that this practice is not necessary. And in the most recent iteration published in 2016, they go on to explicitly say that terms such as complete and incomplete are misleading when it comes to plant-based proteins. And despite the fact that this practice has not been endorsed by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics for over 30 years, this is still a really ubiquitous myth that is being promoted by major health organizations, and the practice of protein combining is still included in the curriculum for nutrition and dietetics students. I have no idea why. Now, despite the fact that there is no such thing as an incomplete protein and protein combining is completely unnecessary, whenever I mention these facts, people fight with me and think that I'm speaking from opinion. But I'm not speaking from opinion, I'm speaking from fact. So let me show you why even thinking about this is completely unnecessary. For starters, it is just objectively false to say that plant-based foods lack any essential amino acids. The only food that lacks an essential amino acid is gelatin, and by extension, collagen. Every other plant-based food contains some amount of all 9 of the essential amino acids. And if you don't believe me, you can go over to the USDA's nutrient database, look up any plant-based food, and you will see that every single amino acid is accounted for. Now, what is true about plant-based proteins is that the amino acid profile in those foods does not perfectly line up to our specific amino acid needs. But big whoop, no food that we eat is going to perfectly meet 100% of our nutritional needs, and we don't judge any other food that we eat on the basis of them being nutritionally complete. That is why we eat a variety. And so since plant-based sources of protein don't contain the exact ratio of amino acids that we need, you might be saying, well, then wouldn't protein combining be beneficial? And the answer to that is no. And there's a few reasons for that. First of all, good old Adele Davis wasn't correct, and you don't have to have a perfect amino acid profile at every single meal in order for your body to utilize that protein. All of the amino acids that you get through food go into an amino acid pool that your body continuously utilizes and recycles. And so the timing of consumption really doesn't matter. Second, the amount of these incomplete proteins that you are eating really matters. And this is where this whole idea completely falls apart. So let's look at the classic protein combining example of eating rice and beans together. The justification for having rice and beans in the same meal is that beans are a little low in methionine and rice is higher in methionine. So the thought goes that if you have them together, then you will get the appropriate amount of methionine. And maybe that would be true if you were only looking at the percentage of a specific amino acid per gram of protein. But that's not actually useful when you're thinking about how to meet somebody's protein needs. You want to know how much of these amino acids people are actually getting from a reasonable serving of that food. Even though the percentage of methionine is higher in rice than it is in beans, you actually get about 4 times less methionine in a cup of rice than you would in a cup of beans, just because beans have a much higher protein content. And so you would actually do a lot better methionine-wise by eating extra beans and skipping the rice entirely. Generally speaking, you don't have to worry about amino acid adequacy so long as you are eating enough protein and you are eating enough calories. Now, a lot of people will add on the third caveat of also so long as you are getting a variety. But I would argue that while, yes, eating a variety of foods is really important for your health, and there are a lot of reasons why you should do it, and it is absolutely something I advocate for, amino acid adequacy isn't one of those reasons. Let me show you why. So let's take a 70 kilogram person. In order to meet the RDA for protein, that person would have to eat 56 grams of protein, or 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now, a lot of people eat substantially more than that, but let's just ride with the minimum so we have the most conservative figures possible. According to the World Health Organization, this is the amount of each essential amino acid that that person would need. If that person were to get all 56 grams of required protein from beans alone, they would get 100% of every single one of those essential amino acids. The same is true for most foods, for lentils, for quinoa, for oats. Now, there are some foods that wouldn't provide 100% of every single amino acid if you were just to eat that bare minimum of 56 grams. For example, tofu would be short on methionine, broccoli would be short on leucine, and peanuts and pasta would be short on lysine. But even for those, the amount that you would be getting from eating the bare minimum amount of protein, if that was all you were eating, is pretty darn close. And it's worth pointing out that 56 grams worth of protein from these specific foods wouldn't meet your calorie needs. And so you would actually have a number of calories that you would still need to fill, which would provide additional protein. But let's take this to the extreme, and let's say that you were going to eat 1,600 calories, which is the absolute bare minimum calorie level that I would recommend for pretty much anybody. And you were going to get those calories from each of these specific foods. If you did that, you would meet 100% of your amino acid needs. The only exception to that would be pasta. But 1,600 calories is too little calories for most people. And so if you were to increase that to 1,800, 2,000 calories, then you would actually meet your essential amino acid needs. Now, I'm not saying this to encourage people to eat 100% of their calories from just one food, because that would be absolutely insane. I am saying this to illustrate to you that even in the most extreme case, so long as you are eating adequate calories and protein, this is just not something that you ever have to worry about. And even if you were going to eat just 1,600 calories of pasta and nothing else, and you were a little bit short in lysine, not getting enough of that amino acid would be the least of my concerns for that person, nutritionally speaking. All of this to say that even in the most extreme and completely unrealistic examples, this is still not a concern. This concept of complementary proteins and incomplete proteins is just one more completely unnecessary food rule that overcomplicates good nutrition and makes people who are interested in plant-based diets think that it is more complicated than it actually is and could potentially be dangerous, and that's simply not true. So eat rice and beans because you like it, not because you are worried that you're not getting enough. There are just better things to put your energy into.